For weeks, the dog sat motionless outside the hospital, its eyes fixed on the entrance as if waiting for someone who might never return. Little did we know, the truth behind its vigil would uncover a story that would leave us utterly speechless. The quiet hum of a bustling city surrounded the towering hospital at its center. People came and went, rushing in and out of its doors. Yet amidst the flow of life, one figure stood out: solitary dog. The animal was medium-sized, with a scruffy coat of brown fur that appeared weathered by weeks spent outdoors. Its piercing amber eyes seemed to hold a mixture of determination and sadness, emotions that went unnoticed by many of the hospital's hurried visitors. The dog's story began to draw attention from a handful of passers-by, especially from Emma, a young nurse of the hospital who first noticed the peculiar sight during her morning shift. Emma was known for her compassion, often staying late to comfort patients or lend an extra hand to her coworkers. She had a soft spot for animals, which made the sight of the lonely dog gnaw at her heart. Every morning, as she arrived for her shift, she saw the dog sitting at the hospital's entrance, its head tilted slightly as if expecting someone to appear. When her day ended, there it remained, curled up on the cold concrete. Emma couldn't shake the thought of the dog. The city was no stranger to stray animals, yet this one behaved differently. It wasn't aimlessly wandering or scrounging for food. Instead, it had planted itself in that single spot, watching, waiting, and hoping. The hospital, located in the heart of the city, was surrounded by a cacophony of urban noise: honking cars, the chatter of pedestrians, and the occasional rumble of an ambulance. But none of it seemed to faze the dog. The hospital itself was an imposing building, a place where life and death intersected every day. Its pristine white walls held countless stories, some joyous, others tragic. Inside, nurses, doctors, and staff worked tirelessly to save lives. Outside, however, the hospital's steps had become an unusual stage for a mystery that few had the time or inclination to unravel. While Emma noticed the dog right away, others brushed it off as just another stray, one of many in the city. On her third day of noticing the dog, Emma couldn't resist anymore. She decided to approach it during her lunch break. Clutching a sandwich and a small container of water, she cautiously stepped toward the animal. As she crouched down, the dog looked up at her with those same soulful eyes, its tail wagging just once before it resumed its patient vigil. It wasn't afraid, but it didn't seem entirely ready to trust either. Emma placed the sandwich on the ground, a safe distance from herself, and backed away. The dog sniffed the food before cautiously eating it, then returned to its spot, its gaze never straying from the hospital doors. Word began to spread among the hospital staff about the dog that refused to leave. Some joked that it might be waiting for a miraculous cure, while others wondered if it had been abandoned by a former patient. The janitor, Mr. Hernandez, claimed he had seen a dog like this one before. "Back in my hometown," he said one evening to Emma, "a stray dog waited outside a store every day for weeks. It turned out the owner had passed away, and the dog didn't know. They're loyal creatures, you know." Emma pondered Mr. Hernandez's words as she watched the dog from a hospital window later that evening. Could it be waiting for someone who would never return? The thought unsettled her. The city had a way of burying tragic stories under its layers of noise and motion, and this dog might just be another silent casualty of that cycle. But something about its unwavering resolve felt different. As the days passed, more people began to notice the dog. Children visiting the hospital with their parents tried to pet it, though it often moved slightly away, its focus never shifting from the entrance. An elderly couple brought a blanket on a chilly evening and draped it gently over the animal, earning them a brief wag of its tail. Even some of the hospital's patients, confined to their rooms, began asking Emma about the dog on the steps. It was as if the animal's quiet persistence had created an invisible thread, connecting people who otherwise might never interact. Emma grew increasingly curious. Who or what was the dog waiting for? And why here, at this hospital? It wasn't long before she began asking around, speaking with patients, staff, and even visitors to see if anyone recognized the animal. Each conversation seemed to deepen the mystery. Nobody knew where the dog had come from, nor could they recall seeing it before its sudden appearance weeks ago. Yet its unwavering dedication made it impossible to ignore. Outside the hospital, the city buzzed on as usual, oblivious to the quiet drama unfolding on its outskirts. But for Emma and a growing number of others, the dog had become a symbol of something larger, a mystery begging to be solved, a story waiting to be told. Days turned into weeks, and the dog's presence outside the hospital began to feel almost permanent. It was as if the concrete steps had become its home. Emma couldn't shake the feeling that this was no ordinary stray. The dog's behavior, so calm yet purposeful, continued to tug at her heart. But what struck her most was its unwavering focus on the hospital doors. It wasn't wandering aimlessly or searching for food. It was waiting for someone. But who? The mystery deepened when Emma decided to dig a little further. On her day off, she spent hours observing the dog from a distance. It didn't chase after passers-by or bark at strangers. Instead, it stayed planted in its spot, occasionally standing up to stretch or pacing briefly when someone new walked out of the hospital. The dog's eyes would light up momentarily as if it recognized someone, only to dim again when the person continued on their way. It was heartbreaking to watch. Emma couldn't help but wonder if this was a case of abandonment. Had someone dropped the dog off at the hospital and left it behind? The thought made her stomach churn. But there was also another possibility, one that was even harder to accept. What if the dog was waiting for someone who had been a patient here, someone who might never return? The idea of such loyalty was both beautiful and devastating. She decided to act. First, Emma approached the hospital staff to see if anyone recognized the dog. Some nurses had seen it sitting outside during their shifts, but none could recall anyone mentioning a lost pet. The receptionist, however, had an interesting observation. "I did see an older man with a dog like that a few weeks ago," she said, tapping her pen on the desk thoughtfully. "He came in looking sick, and I think he was admitted. But I don't know what happened to him after that." This revelation sent Emma down a new path. She scoured the hospital's patient records, searching for any leads. Privacy rules prevented her from accessing too much information, but with the help of a sympathetic colleague, she found a clue. An elderly man named Mr. Thompson had been admitted to the hospital around the same time the dog appeared. He had come in alone, with no listed emergency contact. Emma's heart sank as she read further. Mr. Thompson had passed away just a few days after his admission. Was it possible that the dog belonged to him? Had it followed him to the hospital, only to be left behind when he never returned? The timeline fit, but Emma couldn't be sure. There were still too many unanswered questions. To find more answers, she decided to speak with some of the hospital's regular visitors and nearby residents. Maybe someone else had seen Mr. Thompson with a dog before. Emma's search led her to the small cafe across the street, where many hospital visitors stopped for coffee or a quick bite. The owner, a kindly woman named Mrs. Patel, confirmed Emma's suspicions. "Oh yes," Mrs. Patel said, nodding as she cleaned a coffee cup. "Mr. Thompson used to come in here every morning with his dog. He'd get a black coffee and a plain bagel, and he always shared a bit of the bagel with the dog. It was the sweetest thing." Emma felt a lump in her throat. The dog hadn't been abandoned. It had lost its owner. And now it was waiting for someone who would never return. But how could she explain that to the animal? How could she make it understand that its loyalty, as beautiful as it was, would never be rewarded? Her next step was even harder. Emma knew the dog couldn't stay on the hospital steps forever. Winter was approaching, and the cold would soon become unbearable. She needed to find a way to help the dog move on, even if that meant breaking its heart. But how? Every time she approached the animal, it looked at her with those amber eyes, so full of hope and expectation. She couldn't bring herself to take away the one thing it seemed to hold on to, its belief that its owner would return. Meanwhile, the dog's story began to attract attention. A local journalist who visited the hospital for a separate story noticed the animal and wrote a small article about it. Titled "The Dog That Waits," the piece was published in the community newspaper and quickly gained traction online. Soon, people from all over the city were stopping by to see the loyal dog. Some brought food or blankets, while others simply watched from a distance, moved by its silent vigil. But as the dog became a local sensation, Emma grew more worried. She didn't want it to become a spectacle or worse, a target for harm. She decided she needed to act quickly to find a solution. Emma spent hours researching animal rescue groups and shelters, hoping to find one that could take the dog in and provide it with the care it needed. Yet deep down, she feared that no shelter could ever replace what the dog truly wanted, the person it had lost. As Emma wrestled with her next move, the dog remained on the hospital steps, its gaze fixed firmly on the doors. It was waiting, always waiting, for someone who would never come back. And the weight of that realization pressed heavily on Emma's heart. The day started like any other. Emma arrived at the hospital and parked her car in the usual spot, her eyes instinctively searching for the familiar figure of the dog on the steps. There it was, just as it had been for weeks. Its fur was now matted from the cold and damp weather, but its posture remained firm, its gaze fixed unwaveringly on the hospital entrance. Emma couldn't help but marvel at the animal's incredible resilience and loyalty. But today, something felt different. A weight hung in the air, and Emma couldn't shake the feeling that everything was about to change. That afternoon, a group of strangers began to gather around the hospital steps. News of the dog's story had spread far and wide after the local journalist's article went viral, and people were now flocking to the hospital, curious to see the dog that waited. Some brought treats and blankets, while others stood quietly, taking photos and sharing the story online. Emma, watching from the lobby, felt a mix of emotions. On the one hand, she was relieved that the dog's plight was gaining attention. On the other, she worried about how the animal might react to the sudden influx of people. As the crowd grew larger, the dog seemed to shrink into itself, overwhelmed by the commotion. It backed away slightly, its eyes darting nervously from one person to another. Emma quickly stepped outside, weaving her way through the crowd to reach the animal. She crouched down a few feet away from it, speaking softly to calm it. "It's okay, buddy. You're safe," she whispered. The dog's amber eyes met hers, and for a brief moment, it seemed to relax. But the peace was short-lived. Just then, a loud voice broke through the murmur of the crowd. "Excuse me. Excuse me, everyone." It was a middle-aged man holding a clipboard, flanked by two uniformed animal control officers. Emma's heart sank as she realized what was happening. The man introduced himself as a representative from the city's animal control department, explaining that they had received numerous calls about the dog and were here to take it to a shelter. "We can't leave a stray like this out in the cold," he said. "It's for its own safety." The crowd erupted in protest. People shouted objections, arguing that the dog was fine where it was and that it didn't deserve to be taken away. Emma's stomach churned as she watched the officers approach the animal with a leash and a tranquilizer gun. She knew they meant well, but she also knew the dog wouldn't understand. To it, this wasn't rescue, it was betrayal. Before the officers could get too close, the dog bolted. It darted past the crowd and across the hospital parking lot, its movements quick and frantic. Gasps rippled through the onlookers as the animal disappeared into the nearby woods. Emma's heart pounded in her chest. She couldn't let this be the end of the story. Without a second thought, she took off after the dog, her mind racing with worry. The woods were dense, and the ground was slippery with fallen leaves. Emma called out to the dog, her voice echoing through the trees. "Come back. It's okay. You're safe." But there was no response, only the distant rustle of leaves as the animal moved deeper into the forest. Emma pushed forward, her breath coming in sharp gasps. She couldn't let the dog disappear, not after everything it had been through. After what felt like an eternity, she finally caught sight of it. The dog had stopped at the edge of a small clearing, its body tense and its ears perked up. It looked back at her, its eyes filled with a mix of fear and recognition. Emma slowed her pace, careful not to startle it. She knelt down on the ground, holding out her hand. "It's just me," she said softly. "I'm here to help." The dog hesitated, its body trembling as it debated whether to trust her. Emma stayed perfectly still, her hand outstretched and her voice calm. "I know you're scared," she said, "but you don't have to do this alone. Let me help you." Slowly, the dog inched closer, its nose twitching as it sniffed the air. When it was just a few feet away, Emma reached into her pocket and pulled out a piece of bread she had grabbed from the hospital cafeteria earlier. She placed it on the ground between them and waited. For what felt like hours, the dog simply stared at her. But then, as if making a decision, it stepped forward and took the bread. Emma felt a surge of relief as the animal sat down, its body relaxing ever so slightly. She reached out cautiously, her hand brushing against its fur. It didn't pull away. Instead, it let out a low, soft whine, as if finally releasing the weight it had been carrying all this time. Emma gently fastened a leash around the dog's neck, her hands trembling with a mix of nerves and relief. "We're going to figure this out," she promised. "You don't have to wait anymore." By the time Emma returned to the hospital with the dog, the crowd had dispersed, and the animal control officers had left. She brought the dog inside, where a few of her colleagues helped her set up a temporary bed for it in an unused office. For the first time in weeks, the dog seemed at peace. It curled up on the blanket Emma had laid out, its eyes heavy with exhaustion. Emma sat beside it, her heart full of gratitude and determination. She didn't know what the future held for the animal, but she knew one thing for certain: it would never have to wait alone again. That night, as Emma watched the dog drift off to sleep, she couldn't help but marvel at its resilience. Despite everything it had been through, loss, loneliness, fear, it had never given up. Its loyalty and love had driven it to wait for weeks, refusing to abandon the hope that it would see its owner again. And now, as it lay safe and warm, Emma felt an overwhelming sense of responsibility. She had been given the chance to rewrite this dog's story, and she wasn't going to waste it. As the hospital settled into its nightly rhythm, the dog remained peacefully curled up on the blanket in Emma's office. The once anxious creature now exuded a calmness that hadn't been present in the weeks it had spent waiting outside the hospital. Emma sat nearby, still processing the events of the day. Her mind raced with thoughts about what had compelled the dog to remain so steadfast, and why no one had come forward to claim it. The next morning, Emma contacted a local veterinarian to have the dog examined. She wanted to ensure it was healthy after spending weeks braving the cold and hunger. Her colleagues, who had also grown attached to the animal, helped her arrange transportation. When they arrived at the vet's office, the dog remained quiet, as if sensing it was in safe hands. The veterinarian, a kind older woman named Dr. Harper, greeted Emma and the dog warmly. "You've been through a lot, haven't you, buddy?" she said, crouching down to meet the dog's gaze. As Dr. Harper conducted her examination, Emma explained everything that had happened: how the dog had shown up outside the hospital, how it had waited tirelessly, and how it had become the subject of so much local attention. "Physically, it's in remarkable shape," Dr. Harper said after completing the checkup. "A little underweight, but nothing that can't be fixed with proper care and nutrition. But emotionally, well, that's a different story. Dogs like this don't wait outside a hospital for no reason. It's waiting for someone it loves." Emma's chest tightened at the thought. Who was this person? Where were they? And why hadn't they come for the dog? Dr. Harper suggested scanning for a microchip, which could provide some answers. Emma held her breath as the scanner passed over the dog's neck. A faint beep signaled success. "We have a match," Dr. Harper announced. Emma felt a surge of hope as the veterinarian read the information on the screen. The chip revealed the dog's name, Max, and the contact information of its owner. Emma quickly jotted down the details and made the call as soon as she returned to the hospital. The phone rang several times before a voice answered. "Hello." The voice was hesitant, almost cautious. "Hi, my name is Emma," she began, her voice gentle. "I'm calling about a dog named Max. I believe he belongs to you." There was a long pause. Emma could hear a shaky breath on the other end before the person spoke. "Max? You found Max? Oh my God, I thought he was gone forever." The voice cracked with emotion, and Emma's heart ached at the raw relief she heard. The owner introduced herself as Laura and explained that Max had gone missing several weeks earlier. Laura had been in a car accident and had spent time in the hospital recovering. During that time, Max had somehow escaped from the family friend who was caring for him. Laura had searched everywhere, but hadn't been able to find him. "When I got out of the hospital, I was devastated," Laura confessed. "Max is all I have. He's been my rock through everything. I can't believe he found his way to a hospital, of all places." Emma's breath caught as the pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place. Max had been outside the hospital, waiting for Laura, waiting for the one person he loved most in the world. She told Laura about Max's unwavering loyalty, how he had refused to leave despite the harsh conditions and the passing of time. Laura's tears were audible through the phone. "I need to see him," Laura said urgently. "Can I come now?" Emma arranged for Laura to come to the hospital that evening. When Laura arrived, she was visibly emotional, clutching a framed photo of Max in one hand and a leash in the other. Emma led her to the office where Max was resting. As soon as Laura entered, Max's ears perked up. He lifted his head, his nose twitching as he caught her scent. And then, like a spring uncoiling, he bolted across the room, tail wagging furiously, and leapt into her arms. The reunion was nothing short of extraordinary. Laura sank to the floor, holding Max tightly as tears streamed down her face. "I missed you so much," she whispered over and over, her voice trembling. Max licked her face, his own eyes shining with what could only be described as pure joy. Everyone who witnessed the scene was moved to tears, overwhelmed by the depth of the bond between the two. After the reunion, Laura stayed for a while to share her story. She explained how Max had been a rescue dog, adopted after she had lost her husband in a tragic accident. "He saved me," she said, stroking Max's fur. "I was in such a dark place, but Max gave me a reason to keep going. And now it feels like he's saved me all over again." Emma listened intently, her admiration for Max growing with every word. She realized that the dog's story wasn't just one of loyalty and love. It was a story of resilience, of overcoming the odds, and of the unbreakable bond between humans and animals. It was a story that deserved to be shared with the world. With Laura's permission, Emma reached out to the journalist who had first covered Max's story. She shared the details of the reunion, emphasizing the incredible connection between Max and Laura. The journalist was thrilled to have a follow-up and quickly published a new article. Within days, the story went viral again, this time with an even greater reach. People from around the world were touched by the tale of Max and Laura, leaving comments about how the story had restored their faith in love and loyalty. As the days turned into weeks, life slowly returned to normal. Max settled back into his routine with Laura, who made sure to shower him with all the love and care he deserved. Emma, too, felt a sense of fulfillment. She had played a small but significant role in reuniting Max with his owner, and that knowledge filled her with a quiet pride. But the story didn't end there. Inspired by Max's journey, Emma decided to start a community initiative to help stray and abandoned animals. She partnered with local shelters and veterinarians to provide resources for pet owners and create a network for lost and found animals. The initiative, named Max's Mission, quickly gained traction, attracting volunteers and donations from people who had been moved by Max's story. Max and Laura even became ambassadors for the initiative, attending events and sharing their story to inspire others. Through their efforts, countless animals found their way home, and many more were given a second chance at life. For Emma, the experience was transformative. She had always believed in the power of compassion, but Max's story had shown her just how far that compassion could reach. As she stood at the first Max's Mission event, watching Laura and Max greet a crowd of supporters, she felt a profound sense of gratitude. This journey had started with a stray dog waiting outside a hospital, but it had grown into something far greater, a testament to the enduring power of love, loyalty, and hope. As life seemed to settle into a peaceful routine for Laura and Max, a looming shadow began to emerge, threatening the fragile harmony they had fought so hard to restore. It started subtly, almost imperceptibly, a few coughs from Max that Laura brushed off as nothing serious, followed by periods of lethargy that were unusual for the vibrant dog. At first, Laura chalked it up to the stress Max had endured during his time outside the hospital. But as the days passed, Max's condition seemed to worsen, and Laura's concern grew into full-fledged fear. One particularly quiet morning, Laura woke up to find Max curled tightly in his bed, his normally wagging tail limp and motionless. His breathing was shallow, and his eyes, usually bright and full of life, seemed dimmed by an invisible weight. Panic surged through her as she knelt beside him, stroking his fur and whispering words of comfort. "You're okay, Max. We'll figure this out," she said, though her trembling voice betrayed her own uncertainty. Laura didn't waste a moment. She scooped Max into her arms and rushed to Dr. Harper's clinic. The waiting room felt like an eternity, each second stretching longer than the last as Laura anxiously glanced at Max, who lay still on her lap. When Dr. Harper finally emerged, her face was a mix of calm professionalism and subtle concern. "Let's take a look at him," Dr. Harper said gently, leading Laura into the examination room. As the vet conducted her tests, Laura's mind raced with questions. What could possibly be wrong? Had she missed something crucial? Was Max's time in the cold outside the hospital to blame? The uncertainty gnawed at her, amplifying her fear with every passing second. After what felt like hours, Dr. Harper returned with the results. Her expression was grave. "Laura, it looks like Max has developed a respiratory infection. It's likely a result of the prolonged exposure he faced while waiting outside the hospital. His immune system is weakened, which makes it harder for his body to fight off the infection." Laura's heart sank. "Is he going to be okay?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Dr. Harper placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "It's serious, but we caught it early. With proper treatment and care, there's a good chance he'll make a full recovery." but we'll need to act fast and be vigilant. The treatment plan involved a series of medications, regular checkups, and a strict regimen to ensure Max's recovery. Laura threw herself into the task with unwavering determination. She set up a comfortable space for Max at home, complete with his favorite blankets and toys. She meticulously administered his medications, keeping a detailed log to track his progress. However, the road to recovery was far from smooth. Max's condition fluctuated unpredictably, with some days showing signs of improvement and others bringing setbacks that left Laura feeling helpless. One particularly difficult night, Max began wheezing uncontrollably, his small body racked with effort as he struggled to breathe. Laura stayed by his side, holding him close and whispering soothing words. "You're strong, Max. You've been through so much. We'll get through this together," she said, her own tears streaming down her face. The emotional toll of the ordeal was immense. Laura found herself battling waves of guilt and self-doubt. She replayed the past weeks in her mind, questioning whether there was something she could have done differently to prevent Max's suffering. "I should have taken him to the vet sooner," she thought, the weight of her own perceived failings pressing heavily on her chest. But even in the darkest moments, Laura refused to give up. She drew strength from the bond she shared with Max, the unspoken connection that had carried them through so many challenges before. She reminded herself of Max's resilience, the unwavering loyalty he had shown during his time outside the hospital. If Max could endure weeks of hardship to be by her side, she owed it to him to fight just as fiercely for his recovery. As the weeks went on, small victories began to emerge. Max started eating more regularly, his appetite slowly returning as his energy levels improved. The wheezing subsided, and his tail began to wag again, albeit weakly. Each milestone, no matter how small, felt like a monumental triumph to Laura. She celebrated these moments with quiet gratitude, savoring the sight of Max regaining his spirit. But just as hope began to take root, another challenge arose. One evening, as Laura was preparing Max's medication, she received a phone call from her landlord. The news was devastating. The building was undergoing renovations, and Laura would need to vacate her apartment temporarily. The timing couldn't have been worse. Max was still in a fragile state, and the thought of uprooting him during such a critical period filled Laura with dread. Desperate for a solution, Laura reached out to friends and family for support. Many offered words of encouragement, but few had the means to accommodate her, and Max feeling the walls closing in, Laura turned to the community that had rallied around Max's story months earlier. She posted an update on social media, sharing the challenges they were facing and asking for help finding a temporary home where Max could continue his recovery. The response was overwhelming. Messages poured in from people who had followed Max's journey, offering everything from temporary housing to donations for his medical care. One message, in particular, stood out. It was from Emma, the hospital worker who had first taken Max in. "I have a spare room," Emma wrote. "It's not much, but it's yours for as long as you need it." Max is family now. Laura was overcome with gratitude. She quickly accepted Emma's offer, and within days, she and Max moved into Emma's home. The transition was challenging, but Emma's unwavering support made all the difference. She helped Laura care for Max, offering a steady presence during moments of doubt and fear. As the days turned into weeks, Max continued to improve. The once dimmed spark in his eyes returned, and his playful personality began to shine through. Laura found herself smiling more often, her heart swelling with hope as she watched Max rediscover the joys of life. Through it all, the bond between Laura and Max grew even stronger. Their shared struggle had forged an unbreakable connection, a testament to the power of love and resilience in the face of adversity. And though the journey was far from over, Laura knew they had already overcome the hardest part. Together, they had faced their fears, navigated countless obstacles, and emerged stronger on the other side. For Laura, the experience was a profound reminder of the strength that comes from leaning on others during times of need. The community's support, Emma's kindness, and Max's unwavering spirit had all played a role in their journey. And as Laura looked at Max, now happily curled up at her feet, she felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude for the challenges they had faced, for the love that had carried them through, and for the hope that lay ahead. As the challenges finally began to ebb, Laura and Max found themselves on the other side of an emotional and physical storm that had tested them in unimaginable ways. Max's recovery, though slow and arduous, had transformed him back into the spirited, loving dog Laura first met. His once wheezing breaths now came easily, his tail wagged with renewed vigor, and his eyes sparkled with life. For Laura, seeing Max thrive again felt like witnessing a miracle, a testament to his unyielding will to live and the power of their bond. Life had settled into a peaceful rhythm in Emma's home, where Laura and Max were still staying. The space, though temporary, had become a haven for both of them. Emma's unwavering support proved invaluable, offering Laura the emotional reinforcement she had often lacked. Whether it was helping administer Max's medications or simply sharing a cup of coffee during quiet mornings, Emma reminded Laura that she wasn't alone in her struggles. Max, too, seemed to flourish under Emma's roof. Her sunny backyard provided him with ample space to stretch his legs, chase butterflies, and bask in the warmth of the sun, simple pleasures that once seemed unattainable during his time outside the hospital. Laura watched with quiet joy as Max's personality bloomed. He became a source of light not just for her, but for Emma as well, lifting the spirits of everyone around him with his playful antics and gentle affection. But while the immediate crisis had passed, Laura knew that the journey wasn't entirely over. The emotional toll of the past months lingered, leaving her with questions about what lay ahead. Where would she go once her time at Emma's house ended? How could she ensure Max's well-being moving forward? And perhaps most pressing of all, how could she repay the kindness that had been shown to her and Max during their darkest hours? Determined to turn their shared story into a source of hope and inspiration, Laura decided to take action. One evening, after tucking Max into his bed, she sat down at her laptop and began to write. She started with the day she first met Max outside the hospital, recounting every detail, the pain, the fear, the small victories, and the overwhelming love that had carried them through. The writing process was cathartic for Laura. As she typed, she realized just how far they had come. The words flowed freely, unearthing emotions she hadn't fully processed. By the time she finished, she had written a heartfelt article titled "The Dog Who Waited," a tale of loyalty, love, and resilience. Laura shared the story on social media, hoping it might reach a few kind souls who could appreciate Max's journey. What she didn't anticipate was the overwhelming response the article would receive. Within hours, it was shared hundreds, then thousands of times, spreading across platforms and touching hearts around the world. Messages flooded in from readers who were moved by Max's unwavering loyalty and Laura's determination to fight for him. Some shared their own stories of love and resilience, while others offered support in various forms, donations, offers of housing, and even job opportunities for Laura, who had been struggling to make ends meet while caring for Max. The story's reach extended beyond the digital realm. Local news outlets picked it up, featuring Laura and Max in heartfelt segments that captured the attention of their community. One reporter, deeply touched by their journey, arranged for a fundraiser to support Max's ongoing medical care and help Laura secure stable housing. The outpouring of support was overwhelming, but it also reminded Laura of the profound kindness that had carried her and Max through their darkest days. She was determined to pay it forward. Using the funds from the fundraiser, she not only secured a cozy apartment for herself and Max, but also set aside a portion to help other pet owners in need. Laura partnered with local shelters and veterinary clinics to create a small initiative called Max's Fund, which provided financial assistance to those struggling to care for their pets. The initiative quickly gained traction, drawing support from individuals and organizations inspired by Max's story. Meanwhile, Max became something of a local celebrity. His story resonated deeply with people, serving as a reminder of the unbreakable bond between humans and their furry companions. Laura often brought Max to community events, where he delighted children and adults alike with his friendly demeanor and wagging tail. Despite the newfound attention, Laura remained grounded. Her priority was always Max's well-being and ensuring that their journey served as a source of hope for others. She continued to share updates about Max, documenting their everyday moments of joy and gratitude. Each post was a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the transformative power of love. One particularly poignant moment came when Laura received an invitation from the hospital where Max had waited for weeks. The staff, deeply moved by his story, wanted to honor him with a small ceremony. On a sunny afternoon, Laura and Max returned to the very place where their journey began. The hospital staff had prepared a plaque that read, "In honor of Max, a symbol of loyalty and love." It was placed near the entrance, serving as a reminder to everyone who passed through those doors of the incredible bond between a dog and his human. Laura couldn't hold back her tears as she watched Max sniff curiously at the plaque, his tail wagging as if he understood the significance of the moment. In the weeks and months that followed, Laura and Max continued to thrive. Their lives, once marked by uncertainty and struggle, had blossomed into something beautiful and fulfilling. Laura found steady work as a writer, using her newfound platform to advocate for animal welfare and share stories of hope and resilience. Max, ever the loyal companion, remained by her side, his presence a constant source of comfort and inspiration. As their journey came full circle, Laura often reflected on the incredible twists and turns that had brought them to this point. She thought about the countless challenges they had faced, the moments of doubt and fear, and the unwavering love that had carried them through. Their story, she realized, wasn't just about survival. It was about transformation. It was a testament to the power of kindness, the resilience of the human spirit, and the extraordinary bond that can form between a person and their dog. In her final post about Max's journey, Laura wrote, "Max saved me in ways I never could have imagined. He reminded me of the strength we all carry within us, the power of love to heal even the deepest wounds, and the importance of never giving up. Our story is proof that even in the darkest moments, there is always hope. And sometimes, that hope comes in the form of a wagging tail and a loyal heart." And as she hit publish, with Max curled up beside her, Laura knew that their journey was far from over. Together, they would continue to embrace life's challenges and joys, their bond stronger than ever, a true testament to the power of love and resilience. The journey of Laura and Max had reached a point of serenity, where their lives were no longer defined by uncertainty, but by a renewed sense of purpose. The transformation they experienced together was not just personal. It became a story that resonated with countless others. As Laura sat reflecting on the path they had traveled, she felt a deep sense of gratitude and fulfillment, knowing that their bond had become a beacon of hope for people around the world. Max's tale, which had begun with his heartbreaking wait outside the hospital, was now a symbol of resilience, loyalty, and the incredible capacity for love that animals bring into our lives. The hospital, once the setting of his vigil, had embraced his story in a way Laura never imagined. Visitors often paused at the plaque honoring Max, and many shared their own stories of the animals who had touched their lives. Laura's own life had taken on a new meaning as well. The fundraiser and community support had lifted her out of financial instability, but more importantly, it had inspired her to dedicate herself to a cause she cared deeply about. Through Max's fund, she had created a legacy that extended beyond their own story, offering assistance to countless families and their pets in need. In her writing career, Laura found her voice as an advocate for animal welfare and the bond between humans and their companions. Her articles, inspired by her journey with Max, were published in magazines, newspapers, and online platforms. Each piece carried a message of hope, resilience, and the transformative power of love. She began speaking at events, sharing her story to inspire others to act with kindness and compassion. Max, ever the heart of the story, remained Laura's constant companion. Despite his age and the challenges he had faced, he continued to radiate the same spirit of loyalty and love that had defined his journey. Every wag of his tail, every gentle nuzzle, reminded Laura of how far they had come together. One day, as Laura and Max sat in the park, a place they now visited daily, she watched as he interacted with children, families, and even other dogs. His presence seemed to draw people in, and his story was often a topic of conversation. Parents shared it with their kids as a lesson in love and loyalty, while other dog owners marveled at Max's resilience. The park became a special place for them, a setting where they could enjoy the simple pleasures of life. For Laura, these moments were a reminder to treasure the present, to live fully in the here and now, and to honor the journey that had brought them to this point. But amidst the joy and peace they had found, Laura also knew that their story carried a deeper purpose. She wanted to ensure that their experience wasn't just an inspiring tale, but a call to action for others. In one of her social media posts, Laura shared this message. "Max and I have been through so much together, and our story is proof that even in the darkest moments, there is light. But there are so many animals out there waiting for their own chance at love, their own shot at a happy ending." If Max's story has touched you, please consider making a difference, whether it's adopting a pet in need, volunteering at a shelter, or simply spreading kindness in your own way. The response was overwhelming. People sent messages sharing how Max's journey had inspired them to adopt, foster, or donate. Shelters reported an increase in inquiries from people looking to help animals in need. Laura felt a deep sense of fulfillment knowing that Max's legacy was creating ripples of change far beyond what she had imagined. But Laura wanted to go further. With the support of Emma and the network of advocates she had built, she began organizing community events centered around animal welfare. These gatherings brought people together, celebrating the bond between humans and animals while raising awareness about the importance of adoption, proper care, and the responsibility of pet ownership. At one of these events, Max was the star attraction. Laura gave a heartfelt speech, sharing their story and encouraging others to take action. As she spoke, Max sat beside her, his presence a living testament to the power of love and resilience. Max taught me so much, Laura said, her voice steady yet filled with emotion. He showed me what it means to never give up, to hold on to hope even when things seem impossible. And he reminded me that love, pure, unconditional love, has the power to change lives. My hope is that his story will inspire you to make a difference, to be a light for someone, or some animal, who needs it. As the audience erupted in applause, Laura looked down at Max, who wagged his tail as if he understood the significance of the moment. In the months that followed, Laura continued to build on the momentum of their story. She began working on a book, a deeply personal account of her journey with Max. The process was both challenging and rewarding, allowing her to delve deeper into the emotions, struggles, and triumphs they had experienced together. The book, titled Waiting for Love, The Story of Max, became a bestseller, touching hearts around the world. Readers from all walks of life connected with its message, and many reached out to share how it had inspired them to take action in their own communities. But for Laura, the most meaningful part of the journey was the life she and Max shared. Every day was a gift, filled with moments of joy, connection, and gratitude. Whether it was a quiet evening at home, a walk in the park, or a community event, Laura cherished the bond they had built and the life they had created together. As their story reached countless people, Laura often reflected on how it all began, with a dog waiting outside a hospital, refusing to give up hope. That moment, which once seemed like the beginning of a tragedy, had become the start of something extraordinary. In her final message to her followers, Laura wrote, "Max and I are proof that even the most challenging journeys can lead to something beautiful. Our story isn't just about us, it's about the power of love, the importance of kindness, and the difference we can all make in the world. If there's one thing I hope you take away from this, it's this: never underestimate the impact of a single act of love. It can change everything." As the post went live, Laura closed her laptop and turned to Max, who lay beside her, content and at peace. She reached out to gently stroke his fur, her heart full of love and gratitude. "Ready for our walk, buddy?" she asked. Max wagged his tail, his eyes bright with anticipation. And together, they stepped out into the world, ready to embrace whatever came next, side by side, as they had always been. If Max's story touched your heart, help us spread the message of love and resilience. Share this story, support your local shelters, and consider adopting or fostering a pet in need. Together, we can create more happy endings, just like Max's. Don't forget to subscribe for more inspiring stories, and let's keep spreading kindness, one act at a time.